The universe wasn't silent. It breathed, pulsed, and sometimes it screamed. Captain Elias Vane stood on the scorched remains of what had once been the Andar Colony, his boots crunching over blackened debris and melted metal. The colony's structures, once gleaming with glass spires and ecodomes, were now twisted skeletons clawing at a smoke-choked sky. The only sound was the soft hum of his helmet's filtration system and the distant crackle of fires refusing to die. Vane's heart pounded, but not from the devastation around him. No, he had seen too many battlefields for this to shake him. What gripped his chest was the message his team had intercepted minutes before landing. A garbled transmission, barely decipherable through static, but containing 3 chilling words. It's listening now. Listening, not attacking, not hunting. Listening. He reached up and toggled his comms. Spectre 3, report. Have you located the source of the signal? A breathless voice responded. Negative, Captain. We're picking up movement. It's everywhere, like the entire colony's alive. Vane clenched his jaw. He glanced toward Lieutenant Zara Mendez, standing a few feet. Away, rifle raised, eyes scanning the ruins. Her lips pressed into a thin line, reflecting his own unease. This was supposed to be a reconnaissance mission. In, grab data on the enemy's bioweapon, out. No engagement, no survivors expected, but there it was again, barely audible, threading. Through the comms, Elias. His blood ran cold, his name in his ear, impossible. Mendez looked at him. Sir, did you hear? Yeah. His voice was gravel. Stay sharp. A shuddering vibration rippled through the ground beneath them, like the planet itself was taking a deep breath. Vane tightened his grip on his sidearm. His HUD flickered. Then, movement. Not from above, not from below, from everywhere. The air thickened with an organic hiss, as if the atmosphere itself were flexing its lungs. And then, crawling from the shadows of collapsed buildings, from beneath rubble, and even out of ruptured pipes, it emerged. Pale, sinewy flesh, glistening under the hazy sunlight, tendrils flowing like smoke. A shape without a shape. Eyes that weren't eyes, dozens of them, sliding open across its mass, all fixing on him, not attacking, just watching. Vane raised his weapon. Identify yourself. Stupid. But what else do you say to a nightmare? And then it spoke, not with a voice, not with sound, inside his head. We were made to end you. His breath hitched. The weight of 1,000 battles, betrayals, and wars couldn't prepare him for the voice in his mind, a chorus of whispers and roars. But then, and yet, you command. He froze. Mendez screamed behind him, firing at the thing, but the bullets were swallowed like pebbles in an ocean. The creature didn't flinch. Vane's hand trembled. I don't... What the hell are you talking about? You... Speak, you lead. Orders, command, not ours, but yours. Why? He stared into that impossible gaze. His mind raced. The biohorror weapon, designed by the enemy, forged in genetic hell to annihilate humanity. Sentient, adaptive, sure. But this? Obedient. Why? You, it repeated. He should have run, should have called in orbital strikes, incinerated everything. Instead, he did something worse. He spoke. Stand down. The creature paused and knelt. Captain Elias Vane's breath fogged the inside of his helmet as the biohorror creature knelt before him, an impossibility that twisted logic into knots. His fingers hovered over his weapons. Trigger, instinct screaming at him to shoot, to do something. But what did you do when the monster engineered to annihilate your species just bowed at your command? Sir, what the hell is that? Mendez's voice crackled through the comms, laced with disbelief and barely restrained panic. Her rifle was still raised, her knuckles white. Behind her, Sergeant Kellen Royce and Specialist Hira Chen emerged. From cover, weapons trained on the massive entity. Vane's mind churned. Focus. Protocol dictated fallback and immediate quarantine. No contact, no risks. And yet, this wasn't just contact, it was something else. Mendez, hold fire. Royce, perimeter. Chen, start recording. Full spectrum. I want every frequency logged. His voice cut through the tension, grounding the team in procedure, the one constant in an unraveling reality. Chen's helmet nodded as she pulled out a compact scanner, aiming it at the creature. Readings are, Captain, this thing isn't just biological, it's networked. Neural links firing off like a server farm on overdrive. It's communicating. Vane grimaced. With who? Chen's gaze darted to him, her voice barely above a whisper. You, sir! Fantastic! He turned back to the entity. You said I command. Why? I didn't create you. The creature's flesh rippled like disturbed water, and then thoughts. Not. Words, images invaded his mind. Laboratories filled with synthetic wombs, soldiers in foreign armor, scientists, alien, pulling genetic strings like gods. And at the center of it all, him, no, not him, but someone wearing his face. Vane staggered, clutching his head. Mendez was at his side instantly. Captain, hey, Vane, what's happening? I'm fine, he growled, though his pulse spiked. He wasn't fine. None of this was fine. Orders. Imprinted. The voice echoed inside his skull. Maker's design. Overlaps with yours. Command structure aligned. He processed that slowly. They'd used human neural patterns, his neural patterns, to create control protocols, which meant whoever commissioned this monstrosity hadn't just wanted a weapon. They wanted a remote-controlled army. And somehow, through genetic echoes or sheer cosmic irony, it recognized him as that authority. Chen's scanner beeped erratically. Captain, if I'm reading this right, this thing's neural network is piggybacking off human command frequencies. It's like you're its commanding officer. Mendez swore under her breath. That's insane. No kidding, Vane muttered. A flicker of movement caught his eye. More creatures, smaller, less defined, emerged from the ruins, surrounding them in a loose circle, not attacking, waiting. Orders? The voice pressed. The weight of its expectation was suffocating. Vane stared at the kneeling entity. The galaxy was at war, had been for years. The Confederation's enemies were ruthless. Deploying a bioengineered nightmare was already crossing a line. But this was something far worse. Control a monster, or destroy it. But what if? What if using it meant saving billions? He hated the thought, hated that it tempted him. Sir, Mendez's voice cut through his spiral. What do we do? Vane took a breath that tasted like ash and regret. We find out how deep this rabbit hole goes. The colony ruins stretched endlessly, twisted metal and ash forming a graveyard of humanity's ambitions. Captain Elias Vane moved. Cautiously through the wreckage, the biohorror creature gliding beside him like a shadow given flesh. Every movement it made was wrong, too fluid, too precise. But what unnerved him most was the way it waited. Always watching, always listening. Behind him, Mendez kept her rifle trained on the creature, jaw clenched tight. Sir, this is a mistake. You realize that, right? Thing looks like it's one bad thought away from peeling us like fruit. Vane didn't look back. If it wanted us dead, we'd be corpses by now. We need answers. This thing's the only lead we've got. Yeah? Lead to what? An ambush? Another Andar massacre? Mendez's voice cracked with frustration. This isn't normal, sir. Weapons don't obey. They kill. And yet it hasn't, Vane shot back, more to himself than her. Chen's scanner beeped. Again, readings fluctuating wildly. Captain, the neural signatures are intensifying, like it's sinking deeper with you. If this continues, hell, I don't know, your brain could fry or worse. Noted. He kept moving. Sergeant Royce, trailing. At the rear, grunted. All due respect, sir, but walking around with a pet apocalypse feels like poking a bear that's got a nuclear reactor for a heart. Vane stopped, turning to face his squad. You think I like this? That I trust it? He jabbed a finger at the sea creature, which remained eerily still. I don't. But Command sent us to find the bioweapon program's source. We've found it. Now we learn what the hell our enemies built and why it's keyed into me. Mendez hesitated, then nodded grimly. Royce muttered something about suicidal missions, but fell back in line. The path led them to the colony's central hub, a crater where the main research facility had stood. Shattered data cores flickered in the debris, half-melted terminals. Sparking in defiance against the inevitable decay, Vane knelt by a terminal, wiping away soot. Chen, think you can pull any data? Chen crouched beside him, fingers flying across her portable interface. I'll try, but half this tech's fried. Looks like someone deliberately wiped it before things went south. Not someone, the voice echoed in Vane's head. He stiffened. What do you mean? We cleansed. Orders. Before override failed. He exchanged a glance with Mendez. You destroyed the evidence? Why? The creature shifted, flesh rippling with unsettling grace. No witnesses, no trace, directive erase origin, prevent reclamation. And now, Vane pressed, orders conflicted, command chain, altered, you supersede. Chen's device pinged. Got something, partial logs, encrypted, but wait, Captain, there's a comm relay uplink nearby, not ours. Someone's watching. Vane's stomach sank. How far? 2 clicks north. Elevated position, probably where they monitored the weapon's deployment. He stood, tension coiling in his gut. Royce, perimeter. Chen, Mendez, on me. We find that relay. If someone's pulling strings, I want them cut. As they advanced, through the wreckage, the world seemed to breathe around them. Shadows twisted unnaturally. Shapes flickered at the edge of vision, nothing concrete, just enough to set nerves ablaze. Then a snap, not from debris, from comms. Captain Vane. A new voice crackled through their headsets, calm, measured, and utterly in control. You're tampering with forces you don't understand. Turn back. Vane's eyes narrowed. Identify yourself. A concerned party. Walk away, and you live. Push further, and you won't like what wakes up. Royce barked a laugh. Buddy, you should hear yourself. You sound like a Saturday Hollow villain. Vane ignored him. You built this thing, didn't you? Biohorror weapon, engineered for extinction, and now you're scared because it listens to me. We're not scared, Captain. We're disappointed. Humanity always lets curiosity outpace caution. We gave you a warning. Consider this your last. The comms cut out. Mendez swore under her breath. This just keeps getting worse. They crested a ridge and froze. Below them, an entire field of biohorror. Creatures waited, dozens, hundreds, all facing upward, all staring at him. Royce whispered, sir? Vane's heartbeat thudded in his ears. Then, in perfect unison, the horde knelt. Captain Elias Vane stood at the ridge, heart pounding as hundreds of biohorror creatures knelt before him, a sea of living nightmares awaiting his command. The scale of it was suffocating. Each creature was a biomechanical marvel of sinew and flesh engineered for annihilation. And yet here they were, obedient to him. This isn't happening, Mendez muttered, taking a step back. Her rifle wavered, the weight of the moment sinking in. Vane, what the hell are we supposed to do with that? Royce let out a hollow laugh. Damn Apocalypse Army at your fingertips, Captain. We came here to investigate, not kick off the end of the galaxy. Chen's face was pale beneath her visor. This many bioweapons. If they're deployed, billions dead, sir. We can't let this stand. Vane clenched his jaw. He didn't need the reminders. His pulse was already spiking, his mind racing with scenarios. Use them, destroy them, or something worse. His comm crackled to life again. Captain Vane, the same calm voice from before returned. You've crossed the line. This wasn't meant for you. The experiment was supposed to be controlled. You're experimenting with genocide, Vane growled. And I'm supposed to let that slide? We warned you, but you're a soldier, always pushing orders, aren't you? Very well, if you won't relinquish control." The ridge shook, ground split open in the distance, and from the chasm, something massive emerged. A Titan-class biohorror unit, easily the size of a dropship, heaved itself into view, plated in bone-like armor, its mouth a writhing maw of tentacles and fangs. The smaller creatures scattered, giving it space. It wasn't kneeling. "Override protocol engaged," the voice continued. "We'll pry command from your corpse if we have to." Vane's HUD flared with warning symbols. Chen screamed, "Sir! That thing's radiating enough bioenergy to vaporize us on proximity. We need to move." Mendez grabbed his arm. "Vane, don't be a hero. This is suicide." But Vane's gaze locked onto the Titan. His muscles tensed, instincts clashing with logic. Every fiber of his being screamed run, but something deeper, darker, whispered fight. He toggled his comms. "All units, hold formation, Mendez, Royce, flanking positions. Chen, back me up on neural frequencies. If this thing wants a fight." He stepped forward. "We'll give it one." The Titan roared, a sound like grinding metal and death, charging with terrifying speed. The ground quaked beneath its bulk, debris flung into the air. Vane drew his sidearm, a pitiful weapon against such a monstrosity, but that wasn't the point. "Creature network, awaiting command," the voice inside his head whispered. Vane clenched his fists. "Defend!" The kneeling biohorrors moved. Tendrils, lashing, bodies shifting, they surged toward the Titan in a coordinated assault. The battlefield erupted into chaos, flesh clashing with flesh, sinew against bone. Explosions of organic matter filled the air, screams echoing across the ruins. Royce fired into the fray, cursing. "This is insane! You've got a damn hive mind army, Cap!" Mendez ducked debris, shouting, "We're in over our heads! Pull back before that thing—" Boom! The Titan swatted aside 3 biohorrors, sending them crashing like dolls. It charged again, focusing on him. Vane's mind burned with pressure. Too many voices. The hive's consciousness pressed against his thoughts, seeking direction, craving purpose. "Attack!" "Hold it down," he commanded mentally. The creatures complied, tendrils wrapping the Titan's limbs, claws digging in. It bellowed, thrashing, tearing through the swarm, but slowing. Chen's voice cut through the madness. "Captain, that thing's got a secondary core, overload imminent. If it detonates, we're all dust." Vane's mind raced. "Options, think." He spotted a crumbling tower nearby, unstable, precarious. "Chen, coordinates, top of that tower. Mendez, Royce, cover me. I'm—" "Taking it down," Royce blinked. "You're nuts. Do it!" He sprinted through carnage, biohorrors shielding him as debris rained down. Bullets and tendrils zipped past. Chaos incarnate. Reaching the tower base, he shot the supports, adrenaline roaring in his veins. The structure groaned, metal shrieking as it tipped. The Titan looked up too late. Crash! The tower collapsed onto the monstrosity, burying it beneath tons of steel and concrete. Dust and flesh exploded outward, a shockwave knocking Vane flat. His ears rang, breathing labored. Silence, then a pulse. His HUD flickered, the Titan's core signature gone. Royce's voice crackled. "Holy hell, no, you actually did it." Mendez helped him up. "You're insane. Brilliant, but insane." Vane coughed, glancing at the kneeling creatures. They remained still, awaiting his next order. Obedient, dangerous. Chen approached, visor cracked. "Captain, we just controlled a bioweapon army. What now?" Vane looked toward the distant horizon. Questions swirled. Who built this? Why his neural signature? And what if this was just the beginning? He exhaled. Now, we find the bastards behind this, and end it at the source. But deep down, he wasn't sure who was controlling whom anymore. The battlefield lay in eerie silence, a graveyard of twisted metal, ruptured flesh, and smoldering debris. Captain Elias Vane stood at the edge of the crater, where the Titan-class Biohorror had fallen, his armor battered and caked with soot. The kneeling creatures still surrounded him, obedient as statues. But beneath that stillness, tension crackled like static before a storm. "Captain," Mendez said, panting, "I know you're the man with the plan, but I don't think commanding an apocalypse horde was in the mission briefing." Royce wiped blood from his forehead. "This is beyond Black Ops, sir. We're in end of days territory." Chen's scanner emitted a high-pitched whine. "Captain, you need to see this." Vane turned toward her, his gaze sharp. "Report." She pointed at the data feed projected from her device. Lines of code scrolled across the display, alien characters interlaced with human neural encryption signatures. "I cracked the relay's firewall. The ones controlling this experiment. They're not just watching, they're here." Mendez stiffened. "Here? You mean on planet?" Chen nodded grimly. "Less than a click west. Underground facility. Massive power readings. And get this, our communications are being jammed. They knew we'd find this place." Vane's jaw tightened. "So this wasn't an ambush. It was a test." "Exactly," Chen confirmed. "They wanted to see how far you'd go." Royce spit on the ground. "And we walked right into their game." Vane scanned the horizon. The facility, buried beneath layers of rock and alloy, was their next target. No time for second-guessing. "We finish this. Now." He turned to the biohorrors. "Advance formation. Clear a path." The creatures responded instantly, flowing forward, like a tide of flesh and claws, ripping through debris and obstacles with mechanical efficiency. For every horror story he'd heard about these things, witnessing them follow him was another level of disturbing. Mendez fell in beside him. "Sir, permission to speak freely?" "When have you ever waited?" Vane muttered. "This," she gestured, "at the biohorrors, this feels like opening Pandora's box and then asking the box for directions. You sure about this?" He hesitated. Not out of doubt, but because certainty felt dangerous. "No, but hesitation gets us killed. And whoever's behind that bunker started this war. We're just ending it." Moments later, they reached the blast doors of the subterranean compound, thick, reinforced alloy meant to withstand orbital bombardments. "Chen," Vane prompted, "on it." Her fingers danced across her device. Sparks flew as the locks hissed open. "Brace for company. Internal defenses are hot." The doors groaned apart, and the world erupted. Gunfire, energy bolts, automated turrets rained hell from inside the corridor. Royce dove for cover, returning fire. "This is a kill box, Cap." Vane's mind burned with pressure. The biohorrors surged forward, shielding the team. Organic armor absorbed the onslaught, advancing relentlessly. Inside, resistance stiffened. Elite soldiers clad in advanced combat suits unleashed coordinated volleys, their helmets bearing a crimson insignia, a black sun with a DNA helix at its core. Chen whispered, "That's the Helix Consortium, private military and biotech R&D. They're supposed to be dissolved." "Looks like they didn't get the memo," Mendez growled, dropping 2 hostiles with precise shots. Vane pressed forward. Each step felt heavier. The psychic connection with the creatures deepened, their hunger bleeding into his thoughts. Kill, obey, protect. He clenched his jaw, pushing it back. Not now. Focus. A reinforced door sealed the inner sanctum. Chen hacked furiously. "Almost. There, got it?" The door slid open, revealing a vast chamber. Banks of stasis pods lined the walls, each containing another him. Clones. Perfect genetic replicas suspended in nutrient fluid, their eyes closed, except for one. It opened, staring directly at him. Vane staggered. "What in the hell?" A figure stepped forward from the shadows, tall, dressed in a sleek black suit with silver trim. No armor, no weapon, just confidence. His face bore a faint scar along his cheek, a mirror of Vane's, but older. "Captain Vane," the man greeted. "Or should I say, Subject 0. Mendez's rifle snapped up. Who the hell are you? I'm the architect of all this. He gestured to the biohorrors, the bioweapons, the neural link, the clones. And you, Elias, you were the prototype, the control variable, the perfect soldier designed to command destruction. Vane's mind reeled. You're lying. Am I? The man smiled. Why else would the weapons obey you? You were never sent to stop this project. You are the project. A cold pit opened in Vane's stomach. His memories, his service, his missions, fabricated. What do you want? He growled. Choice. The man stepped closer. Helix's clients want a living weapon. We built that army for them, but you've shown something remarkable. Control. Help us deploy them. Galactic order through absolute fear. You'll be a god, Vane. Or... His gaze darkened. You fight me, and this facility detonates, killing everyone in a 1,000-kilometer radius, Mendez hissed. He's bluffing. Am I? The floor panels illuminated. A countdown began. 0:05, Shiurn. Royce raised his rifle. Cap, we can shoot him and bolt. But Vane's eyes locked with his clones. Himself. A twisted reflection. This isn't about winning, is it? It's about survival, evolution, humanity ascendant through you. Time bled away, choices crystallized, save billions by controlling the monsters, or destroy everything to stop them from ever being used. Vane's hand hovered over his comm. Orders? The horde waited, the room waited, the clock ticked down. 004 terrors, and Vane spoke 2 words. I choose humanity. The word echoed through the chamber like a gunshot. Captain Elias Vane didn't hesitate. His finger slammed the comm, overriding the neural network that connected him to the horde. His voice was calm, resolute, final. Terminate all hostile assets, facility included. For a breathless moment, nothing happened. Then, chaos. The biohorrors turned as one, moving with terrifying precision. Tendrils lashed out, smashing consoles, shredding walls. Stasis pods exploded in showers of glass and fluid. Clones obliterated before they could awaken. No! The Helix director, the man claiming to be his creator, lunged for the control panel. You don't understand. This is bigger than you. Vane grabbed him by the collar, slamming him against the wall. You built weapons. I made a choice. The countdown kept ticking. Dojo 230. Mendez fired at incoming guards, voice sharp. Cap, we gotta move, now. Royce laid down covering fire. Not to rush, but this whole place is about to go boom. Vane shoved the director aside. Chen, evac route. Chen's fingers flew over her tablet. Back corridor leads to a maintenance shaft. If we book it, we clear the blast radius by 60 seconds. Maybe. Good enough. He turned to the horde. Monsters. Ripping apart the facility with surgical brutality. Final order. Self-terminate. No survivors. A pulse of psychic energy hit him. Grief. Obedience. He didn't know, didn't have time to care. Move! They ran. Corridors collapsed behind them, flames licking at their heels. Biohorrors tore through steel and flesh to keep enemies off their backs. The Helix director's shouts echoed. Distantly, rage, fear. But Vane didn't look back. Climbing the maintenance shaft felt like a lifetime. His muscles screamed. Heart pounded. Adrenaline kept him moving, no 30. They emerged into open air, ash-filled sky stretching above. Royce grabbed Chen, hauling her out. Mendez rolled onto the dirt, gasping. Vane was last. He turned once, saw the facility's entrance glow with an ominous light. For what it's worth, he whispered, I was never your weapon. Boom! The ground erupted. A shockwave flung them like rag dolls. Heat seared. Sky turned white, then black. Silence. When Vane opened his eyes, he saw stars. Not the poetic kind, just the cold, indifferent ones scattered across the night sky. He coughed, sitting up. Every bone hurt. Vane? Mendez's voice. Weak. You alive? Barely. He sat up, spotting the others. bruised, battered, but breathing. Royce chuckled hoarsely. "Remind me to decline your next mission invite, Cap." Chen lay back, staring at the stars. "We stopped it, right?" Vane looked toward the crater. Nothing left but smoke and ruin. "Yeah." A pause. Then Mendez asked, "Was it worth it?" He didn't answer right away. He thought of the biohorrors, tools of extinction that for a fleeting moment had looked at him like something more. Not monsters, not weapons, soldiers. "We did what we had to," he said finally. Someone had to make the call. Above them the stars kept shining, unmoved, uncaring. Somewhere in the galaxy wars raged on, alliances fractured, new threats loomed. But tonight they'd stopped one nightmare, and that would have to be enough. 3 weeks later, the sterile walls of the debriefing room felt more suffocating than the battlefield ever had. Captain Elias Vane sat alone at the steel table, the overhead light casting sharp shadows across his face. His uniform, freshly laundered, couldn't scrub away the weight of what he carried, what he chose. The door creaked open. Admiral Rourke entered, face lined with years of war and hard decisions, followed by 2 intelligence officers. Their eyes were cold, clinical. He'd seen that look before, assessing a threat, not a man. "Captain Vane," Rourke began, voice gravelly. "Your report was thorough." Vane said nothing. The Admiral continued, flipping through the digital dossier. "Helix Consortium's facility destroyed. Unauthorized bioweapon program terminated. No survivors, no recoverable data." He glanced up. "No evidence of Helix's clients or broader network." "Convenient." Vane's jaw tightened. "They covered their tracks. I ended what I could." "Did you?" One of the intel officers leaned forward. "We intercepted fragmented transmissions post-detonation, scattered reports of biohorror signatures, responding to unidentified frequencies." Vane's stomach twisted. "I gave the kill order." "Orders can be overridden," the officer countered. "You were connected. How can we be sure they're gone?" He didn't answer. Couldn't, because deep in the quiet of those sleepless nights sometimes, he still felt them, a phantom echo at the edge of his thoughts, listening. Rourke sighed. "You disobeyed direct extraction commands, compromised team safety, and engaged. An unknown bioweapon system, on paper that's court-martial material." Vane met his gaze, and off paper, a beat. Then the Admiral slid a data chip across the table. "Off paper, you prevented a galaxy-wide extinction event. That buys you leniency. For now." He didn't pick up the chip. "And the clones," Rourke's expression darkened. "Destroyed. Officially, you're the only Elias Vane in existence." "Officially," Vane echoed, skepticism lacing his tone. The Admiral stood. "You'll be decommissioned for psychological evaluation, recommended therapy, isolation protocols. You're a liability." "Son, whether you like it or not," Vane let out a dry laugh. "So that's it? Save the galaxy, get benched?" "Better than the alternative." Rourke paused at the door. "You played God out there, Captain. Just be glad we're not burning you at the stake for it." The room emptied. Silence settled again. Familiar. Oppressive. Vane rubbed his temples. Exhaustion. Clawing at him. No survivors, no evidence. Yet the unease gnawed deeper. Then a vibration, not the room, not his comm, his head. A whisper brushed his mind. Orders. Pending. His heart pounded. "No, they're gone." Another whisper, softer, colder, awaiting command. He bolted to his feet, breathing ragged, hands clenched. "It's over. It's over." But was it? He stared at his reflection in the polished surface of the table. Same face, same scars. But behind his eyes, something different. Was he still the man who made that choice, or the weapon they'd always intended him to be? 2 months later. The stars stretched endlessly above the barren landscape of Sirius 9, a desolate rock on the outer rim of known space. Captain Elias Vane, former captain, former human, stood alone at the edge of a cliff, the cold wind cutting through him like glass. His coat flapped around his legs as he gazed at the horizon, where the sun bled crimson into the blackness of night. He lit a cigarette, an old habit he thought he'd left behind. The first drag burned his lungs. He welcomed the pain. It was normal, real. Behind him, a dropship's engines powered down, kicking up dust. Footsteps crunched over loose rock. "Didn't think I'd find you here," said a familiar voice. Vane didn't turn. "You didn't. I let you." Mendez appeared beside him, helmet tucked under her arm, gaze distant. "Hell of a view. Why are you here, Mendez?" His tone was flat, tired. "Got discharged last week," she said, glancing at him. "Figured I'd find the man who saved the galaxy and disappeared."